If you haven't been living under a rock, you probably know about the drama that rose over these last few days. It was about Sergio Perez purposely crashing in Monaco in order to start the race in a higher position than his teammate Max Verstappen, who then returned the favour in Brazil by not letting the Mexican pass, even though he was in the fight for second place in the championship. At the end, Checo ended up not getting second in the final standings, and even though it was in part Verstappen's fault, we could say that it was mostly because of all of his errors. But that's not why we're here. In fact, today we're discussing some of the shocking things that came out in Carlos Sainz's most recent interview in Abu Dhabi when asked about Perez's crash. So, let's not waste any more time and get into the video. And make sure to stick around till the end, as the rules are about to change in the sport that we all know and love. First of all, I know what you might be thinking. Wait, Checo's crash in Monaco was just an accident. Well, this means that you haven't watched our video on the topic. Make sure to check it out after this video. But just to give you an idea of what it says, basically it can be understood by watching the telemetry that Checo crashed his cars into the barriers on purpose by giving an unnecessary 93% spike in throttle mid-corner, making his car do a U-turn into the barriers and getting to start the race in front of his teammate Max Verstappen, who was on a flying lap and had to stop because of the red flag subsequent to the crash. This is probably what made the rivalry between the two Red Bull drivers begin, and maybe also the reason why Verstappen didn't let Checo through before the finish line at the Brazilian Grand Prix. When asked about the topic, these two remained silent on the topic, denying any allegation. But what other drivers and competitors think about the topic is pretty different. Of course, there are a lot of people who agree with these two. First of all, Toto Wolff, who during an interview said, "I've known Sergio for a long time. Would a driver really put his car on a wall and risk his gearbox? You could be going all the way to the back of the grid with such an incident." He clearly stated that in his opinion it wasn't worth the risk taken, as the difference between third and fourth isn't that huge, and that he still had no way of knowing that position would have given him the victory. But in his interview, he also said that he didn't have the data to show the crash was done on purpose, which we have. So it's unclear whether he should be trusted or not. Then there was Ferrari's Mattia Binotto and Red Bull's Christian Horner, who were also on the same side as Mercedes' team principal. But it's probable that they were just trying to shift attention from that race to current events, in order not to make up drama that doesn't exist. Then there was McLaren's Zak Brown. What he said let out a different message to the one Toto intended. He said, "Monaco was a long time ago. I think that train's left the station," leaving fans to intend that the FIA should stop investigating, not because the crash didn't happen, but because the qualifying session was a long time ago, meaning that in his opinion, the crash could have also been willingly done by Perez. But at the end of the day, this is all just speculation. Something that isn't speculation though were the clear words said by Carlos Sainz in the interview after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. When asked about what he thought about the Perez crash, he couldn't really answer what he thought about the matter, since his team was in favour of the option of Perez not receiving any consequence, so he had to stay calm. At the question of whether he thought the crash was on purpose or not, he kept answering that he wouldn't comment on the topic, and repeated himself every time he said that, and I quote, "I think all 20 drivers in ourselves, we know immediately whether the driver has done it on purpose or not because we're not stupid." Leaving his English aside, he's probably right. F1 drivers, especially the more experienced ones, know how a purposeful crash is done and can recognise it. But then why is it that the FIA can't? Well, simply put, the rules currently in place aren't accurate enough to solve this kind of problem. Sainz also got asked what he thought about the FIA doing nothing, and he answered with some fair options. First, he proposed that whoever causes a yellow or a red flag during qualifying, making his competitor's lap time cancelled, should receive some kind of punishment. What he proposed was to use the same system IndyCar uses, where the drivers who cause the red flags get their best lap time deleted. I mean, I think this is how that system works. There is literally no information online about this. Getting back on track in this way, they're going to be a lot more careful during qualifying to not obstruct competitors. Also, pretty much completely eliminating the option of crashing on purpose to get grid position that would otherwise be taken by someone else. We've seen this in a lot of situations. Drivers forcing each other to slow down by crashing or by getting debris on the track, even in examples that don't sound like they did anything on purpose. An example was George Russell during the Brazilian Grand Prix, when he crashed into the gravel, bringing out the red flag and getting Kevin Magnussen on pole position, as when the session restarted, there was heavy rain and slick tyres didn't work like they should have. Not trying to take anything away from Magnussen though, he did get the fastest lap while everyone else was on track with slick tyres. Except Leclerc, we don't talk about Ferrari's strategy here, so he definitely deserved the first grid slot. But if time didn't run out, maybe he could have been challenged or even beaten. Who knows? In the meantime, despite crashing, George Russell got a modest P3. Do you get the point? At the end of the day, it's not the driver's fault. They always try to win in all the ways possible, even when that comes at a cost of fair play and regulations following. So, should the FIA introduce a new rule to make sure this never happens again in the future? Well, of course. As fans, we don't like seeing sessions being stopped because of red flags, whether that is intentional or not. But when it can be avoided, it should. Furthermore, it would add another level of risk to this sport. Drivers on their flying lap must be careful not to crash, because now they can just start the race anyway. But if the new rules are implemented, it means we could see front-running drivers ending up at the back of the grid, which is something not really enjoyable for fans of that driver, but a great experience in general, because seeing the grid being shaken up a bit is always something that brings a bit of a show to the fans. All jokes aside, this problem is really serious. More drivers than we think are probably crashing on purpose, and we know that from one of them. During that same interview, Carlos Sainz told the journalist that these kind of crashes happen more often than we might think. He said that he knows some examples of this that are unknown to us, but that it's not right to throw dirt on another driver's career, and that he might tell us if we go out for a drink or for dinner without microphones. Penalties should also not be limited to the drivers, but if it's clear that it wasn't a team's decision to make one of their drivers crash, the team should be punished as well. And I'm not talking about a fine like the one Red Bull got for the budget cap, which they probably didn't even see. I'm talking about something more serious. For example, like what happened to Briatore and Simmons in 2008 at Red Bull, after they forced Nelson Piquet Jr. to crash into the wall at Singapore Grand Prix, getting a late safety car out and helping Alonso win the race. They got banned from Formula 1 for a long period of time and lost some of their major sponsors as well. It should be made clear that this isn't just a game. This is a sport where people get hurt and risk death by being on track. So next time someone decides to be a danger to others, he should be suspended or even separated from the other drivers and the whole championship, or else everyone is going to start crashing on purpose, and that isn't going to be fun. So, what do you think? Should, in your opinion, Perez be fired by Red Bull? What is the best way to make sure no one crashes on purpose? Let us know in the comment below, and don't forget to subscribe, because at 10,000 subscribers, we're going to offer Carlos Sainz a dinner to get the most amount of information we can out of him on this topic. No, not really, but you should subscribe anyway.